Welcome to Beyond My Crisis. I'm your host, Ron Rossnick.
And I'm Vivian Gaspar.
And today we have Dr. Ryan, who graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown University and Georgetown Medical School. He was director in numerous cancer centers, including the highly renowned Dutch Heiser Cancer Center. Dr. Ryan is board certified in internal medicine, hematology, and oncology. He is now retired as a full colonel from the Air Force and professor of medicine at University of California at the Davis School of Medicine.
Hi.
Dr. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate that you've written this extraordinarily comprehensive book. Can you talk us through on how patients and their loved ones can get beyond that initial phase of crisis?
Sure. Getting beyond is kind of what you need to focus on. A lot of people say you need to get over something, adverse event in your life. Get over it. Just get over it. Well, you don't get over just being diagnosed with cancer. And they say, well, go around it. You can't go around it. It's still going to be there. You can't go under it. Of course not. You have to go through it. And that's precisely the message of when tumor is the rumor and cancer is the answer, taking them through the journey, the toughest journey most likely of their lives.
One of the big difficulties is anxiety. How does your book deal with that subject?
It calls it for what it is. Anxiety is fear of the unknown, and fear is the types of feelings we have when we're anxious, but you know what you're afraid of. So anxiety can paralyze you. It can suck your soul right out of you. It can make you make irrational decisions. It can leave you desperate, disconsolate, despair, without hope, out of control. The opposite of all that, once you're informed, once you're knowledgeable, once you're given power to deal with the crisis that you're in, you can get beyond the crisis and you can move forward now empowered.
So your book confronts anxiety and gives us tips on how we deal with it, whether it's spiritually, medically, in all forms.
That's right. That's a major theme of the book, is you're really scared.
Yeah.
Because the rumor is no longer a rumor, cancer is your answer, and you're really scared.
And the past, cancer was like this fearful sentence of doom.
Yes.
And today, there's a lot going on. There's so much more.
Right, but it hasn't filtered through beyond the fact that the public will now say what you said. Oh, they must have something today, though, or I've heard such and such. Well, they must have something today is true. There are a lot more therapies than were available 25, 30 years ago. But the other statement is kind of, if someone's whispering in their ear who thinks that they're an expert in oncology, that's a big mistake. And I guarantee you, whether the whisperer is the internet, a well-meaning friend, a family member, or something that they read somewhere that didn't take into account their special case, can do a lot of harm.
Did you notice that that's come up when you've treated your thousands of patients? Maybe they looked up maybe on WebMD or some other place on the website, and has that caused any issues for you when you went to treat them?
Well, what you do is you address that right away in the first meeting with the patient, which is something they never forget. So you get one shot at a first impression, and then good luck trying to erase that if it needs to be erased for the rest of the time, because they're so frightened, and you're the focus of their fear.
How are doctors different today then?
I think that they're more engaged with informing the patient, which is where I was headed with your question. Talking directly to the patient about all those things that you just mentioned is what you do. You embrace them. You address them right away because you know they're happening, whether they show it or not. For instance, you need to ask a patient, are you afraid? A lot of doctors would just, what?
Really?
Because they don't want to talk about the emotional stuff. They just want to talk about the scientific, clinical side.
And you can do both.
But healing is really holistic today.
You can do both. You can be an expert of what's cognitive and then the cupboard of your heart. You can do both of these things.
And we hope that our oncologist has the bedside manner to be human beings and to be great clinicians.
That's why one of the chapters in the book is called The Oncologist. They're much more similar to each other than they are to another type of physician. Such as a radiation therapist. Very different.
Right.
Not
they don't
just
really,
training, but very different.
They don't interface with the human
being.
Not
to the same degree. Very different. Family practitioners, you can almost pick the guy in medical school is going to be one, and the pediatrician, and the surgeons. But medical oncologists, they're their own breed unto themselves, and that's why I put the chapter in there, so that you, the patient, can be somewhat more informed as to what am I meeting? What training has gone on here? What did they have to sacrifice? What do they know? How extensive has their training been? How do they value life? What is the purpose and meaning of somebody who's willing to go in the fight against cancer? It's not the same as other people.
You really need to know your material, what you have in this book before the cancer happens. Because when cancer happens, the anxiety, the panic, the rush to be in action kind of happens, and then you can't sit back and take in all of your wisdom.
Really, oncologists should take a look and understand that how they interact with their clients really can make a huge difference in how their patients get through or get beyond their cancer.
Yeah, it's very true. When I went over to Oxford for a while in my training, I noticed that without a lot of the technology that we had in the United States, a lot of things that could distance you from a patient by relying too much on tests, they didn't have quite the same level of technology, but they embraced their patients. They talked about their family and the community activities. It was very different than what occurred in the United States. We were a little bit more technical. There's neither a right nor a wrong. It's a mixture of both that you need.
And the balance of being a human being
you
is
have
necessary.
to be both.
Well, the PAs today, physician assistants, are really accepted into the program.
Absolutely, yeah.
Based on their bedside manner, their ability to communicate emotionally and empathetically.
And that's a good thing, but it's not a good thing if it's because doctors aren't doing it.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the doctors...
They'll just defer to another person. Not good.
And it's not good, right.
Not good. You need to build a team. You have to have a team.
And building a team
the center of the patient.
That's really important.
Yes.
And we'll be right back with our definition of K.I.S.S. as Dr. Ryan defines it. We're back to Beyond My Crisis with Dr. Ryan.
And Dr. Ryan has explained to us that one of the most fundamental aspects that he covers in his book is his K.I.S.S. formula.
Right.
And that's with 3 S's, a little
Triple S.
unusual.
Yes,
the
triple
S K.I.S.S.
When you've been kissed by the K.I.S.S. rule, you've been empowered to fight your cancer.
So what is the K in K.I.S.S.?
The K is knowledge.
Knowledge.
And that's the entire book. Knowledge empowers you to deal with anxiety and turn it into hero-making fear. Knowledge can take you out of that cave and attempt to do all you can to have a rich and productive life.
And I think people generally get that knowledge is the most important factor. But there's other factors that without them, knowledge is not going to be applied properly.
Not enough.
So
you have to have the
I?
And the I is for inquiry. You have to ask questions. There's no end to the questions you ask, only that you forgot to ask a question. That's the only reason why you're not asking questions anymore.
But how do we think when we're doing our inquiry? What kind of process?
That we don't know enough, that we could never understand it, that this is all overwhelming to me. Oh, I'll just trust a doctor. Those are some of the destructive thoughts.
But the doctor may not even have enough time for us to ponder what the I could be.
The doctor makes the time, and that's my answer.
How much time can a doctor spend with us?
You will end up saving time when you inform a patient as you should do appropriately. You will save a lot of time, and you may save a lot of suffering. So for me, I don't buy it, that the amount of time with patients has become limited. That's true. Just talk to them, connect with them. It's inquiry on both sides. The patient has to ask, but the doctor has to check in with the patient.
Right.
And I like how you mentioned that this book also serves as basically training for oncologists to help them be better with interacting with their patients.
Well, I wouldn't be so bold as to put myself as a guru,
Well,
but I appreciate what you're
noticed a lot
saying.
of those aspects when I was reading the book. I was thinking that, wow, oncologists could really benefit as well on how they interact with their patients.
Well, I think you're right.
I think so.
I really think that's
and as more
the case.
patients and more family members start reading your book, if the oncologist doesn't know the precepts of your book and K.I.S.S. as we're describing it now, they're not going to be the best that they can be.
Right, that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So tell us, we were up to the I for inquiry.
Okay.
Right.
So now we have 3 S's left.
Spirituality. There's much more to us, and everybody knows this, even the most ardent atheist. There's much more to us than a pound of flesh and a shank of hair. There's
Right.
much more to us than that.
Doesn't matter about religion. It
No,
matters
that
about
could be your spirituality to a large degree. It may not be for someone else. It might be philosophy and thinking of things outside of the realm of the perpendicular pronoun I. It's thinking of teams, of being creative, of joining support groups. It's reading inspirational literature. It's getting physical exercise, guided meditation. All of those things tap into spirituality. You don't do it. You don't engage it. You don't do where I relate in Read the Directions First in that chapter, which is a recipe for the sweet life. You don't do any of those things. Any of these thoughts have been around since man's been around. You're going to have a more miserable experience.
I think our society is coming back to spirituality.
Absolutely.
We're elevating our
I
mind.
agree.
Mindfulness is like
I
this
agree.
new term that's an old term
Right.
of just being more conscious.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the case, and I'm not expressing spiritual healing per se, but in the realm of your spirituality, there is healing that can occur.
And also meditation. You just
Absolutely.
mentioned guided
Sure,
meditation, and so many
sure.
people are talking about how that's important in everyday life. I can't imagine how crucial it is when going beyond a cancer's treatment.
Right. And this is not about the cure. This is about
No.
one of the components
Right.
that we need to be
That's
our
right.
best.
Absolutely, and to be in the game, ready to fight.
All right, that's the first of 3 S's. What are the other 2 S's?
Well, scribe is the next one.
Writing things down.
The pharaohs used to have a little guy to sit at their feet and write down everything the mighty pharaoh said.
So find someone to sit at our feet.
Right. Find a loved one, a family member. It might be yourself, but probably not. It probably should be an external person.
My scribe these days is my iPhone.
Yeah.
And I've got a great app that not only records the audio, but will transcribe the audio, and I can copy and paste the transcribed
That's wonderful.
text.
That's a wonderful example because I've often given patients a recorder so they can record at home their questions after we've met, and record when we talk, so
But
they
then
can
they have
go
to
over it.
listen to it.
Right, they're able to listen to it.
This app, I forgot the name of it. You just copy and paste
Sure.
after it does the transcription.
So that's a vital importance. Yes.
My question would be, I still think it would be additionally beneficial to have another human being there with you
It
if at
is.
all possible,
It
because
is.
2 minds, someone's thinking of
That's
another
right.
question that you wouldn't necessarily if it's
That's
your
right.
life and you have this cancer diagnosis.
That's right.
It's too much information going on, and
It's-
writing
That's right.
it down is
That's
essential.
exactly right. You
It's
want
smart.
them fully engaged, and that's why I said an external person.
Right, then you're probably the person receiving this information as the patient.
Right.
Is possibly very likely some kind of frozen in fear
Right.
or anxiety, and they
Right.
can't think very clearly for themselves.
That's why one of the first things I do, which is unconventional and maybe disarming, but I ask the patient, "Are you afraid?"
You do ask that.
Yeah, but I usually ask it this way: "Are you afraid or are you anxious?" And that always gets them. And I say, "It's not a test. Let me explain the difference." And they always say, "Well, I'm anxious, aren't I?" I said, "Yeah, we can fix that."
Right. But fear,
Right.
which is an acronym that they colloquially talk about, false evidence appearing real.
That's right. That's right. It's what you know that you think you're afraid of. It's not what you don't know, which is much worse.
Which is
Much worse.
why your book is crucially important, because now you're taking those belief systems of what cancer could be or has been or you've heard on TV or radio or movies and see what is the reality that fits into your particular diagnosis.
Exactly right.
So now there's 3 S's.
Last
We've done
S.
2. What's the third?
Well, Ron had already covered this, and he mentioned teamwork for a second and pulling it all together.
So how's that an S?
Well, synergy.
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 That's the other S.
Synergy
Right.
is the word.
Pulling all the parts in
Right.
and making it more powerful.
Anybody who's
together.
watched professional sports, any sport, it doesn't really matter. If you had I've used the example of a hockey team, but you got a basketball team, and a great center, but he doesn't play with the other kids in the park. A great forward, a shooting guard, but they don't play with other people. You're going to lose the game. You have to make a whole that is bigger than the sum of its parts. A team must be built where the patient is the captain of the ship, and the oncologist and his or her staff are kind of like the admiralty that's aiming it in the right direction, using their superior fund of knowledge about cancer, but not about the individual, because they know themselves better than you think you do. Know them.
And the best successful organizations
Right, team.
use teams. I mean,
Absolutely.
from political organizations running a government,
Right.
the president doesn't know everything technically.
Right.
He has his advisors, but he's the hub of disseminating the next action.
As
based
my
on-
my role as the grand old man of oncology in some of the centers I've been at, that was mandatory. I would go to the CEO and say, we're going to build teams where we have patient care conferences. I don't want to just send someone off to radiation oncology and not have them talk to them about the case face to face. they need to be coming to these conferences for patient care. We need to be familiar and at ease with what the other does and talk to each other about what the other does so the patient benefits from having a team approach. It's very important.
Very important.
So
yeah.
KISS, knowledge, inquiry, spirituality, scribe, and synergy.
Synergy.
And if you've been kissed by the KISS, you are empowered to do well.
Yeah, and that's the best way to get success
Yes.
and get through that crisis.
Yes, it is.
Well, we're going to take another break on that note, and we're going to come right back and see what else that Dr. Ryan can share that will mean a critical difference in your cancer care.
Thank you.
Anytime you can come into court and file for a change if there's a change of circumstances. We give an hour free consult. It's confidential. Find out what has to be done.
Welcome back to Beyond My Crisis. We are here with Dr. Kevin Ryan, helping you understand how to get beyond your cancer diagnosis.
Doc, there are so many chapters in your book. I'm going through this. To get beyond this crisis, what are the quintessential chapters that you think are
One is that we have never addressed would be reading the stories of the patient in the back of the book.
Mm-hmm.
You will see a treasure trove of experiences that you will absolutely be able to relate to one way or another.
So relatable stories are
Yes,
really
very
important.
important. They're real stories, real patients, permission has been given,
Mm-hmm.
change the names, of course. Some don't turn out so well. Some turn out very well, and some are almost miraculous. It's important to read that to get a real scope of the landscape.
So
you know?
miracles can happen,
Yes, I believe they can.
but all along the way, I think one of the things your book does bring about is how to be during the process.
Yeah, and we discussed anxiety at length, and that would be those chapters about reading the directions first, and anxiety would be important. Learning about what is cancer. Once you can name your enemy, you can describe your enemy, you can fight your enemy. So the chapter that talks about the enemy,
Right.
naming the cancer is important.
And what I really want to touch on for a second, you just mentioned in the stories that are in the back of the book,
Yes.
and you said you believe miracles are possible.
Well, I think that believing in miracles is miraculous enough.
Well, that's what I was just about to ask you.
I've seen one.
Okay, so
What do
from a doctor's perspective, I've got to ask, I really believe that information is key, but I think that information gives you hope and understanding.
That's right.
But having seen at least one solid miracle, that leads me to ask you, how do you feel about prescribing, if you will, the concept of keeping hope alive?
Well, it's essential. It's a theme that runs throughout the entire book. You get the knowledge for the sole purpose of having no longer massive despair, not being helpless.
I think that
And I was going to address that as
Yeah.
another one of the topics that you wanted me to
Just what I was
say.
saying.
But some people think a miracle has to be like divine intervention, like the
No.
burning bush. I
No.
think little miracles
Not explained
are really
by
important in our life.
normal rules of how
Right.
the universe seems to work.
What do you say a miracle is?
Things that occur that are beyond human reasoning and explanation. Now, if human reasoning is also to include the imagination and the creativity, then they're not at all beyond
I
human
think we should
reasoning.
acknowledge the little miracles because that brings hope.
So the other things that you're asking me to talk about that would be important. But what do I say is a big one. But what do I, as a loved one or
Yeah.
a friend or a family member, say to my spouse, my relative, my friend when I'm in the room with them? They're scared to death.
Yes.
They don't know what the hell to say. That's what the chapter is about. It tells them what to say. Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I went through a situation very similarly. My friend passed away about 2 years ago, and she unfortunately was in several, unfortunately 3 relationships that were very abusive, and she had, I think it was like 4 or 5 different types of cancers at one time. And I remember she lived about 2.5 hours south of here, where I lived. And I drove down and I spent the last 12 hours with her, and she passed away the next morning. And I knew her well over 10 years. And it seemed to me from when she was in the throes of more of the hardship of the abuse is when the cancers came back more vigorously.
Well, stress and malignancy has been around since Hans Selye pioneered the concept in the early 20th century. So I'm not here to tell you that in any way is a cause of cancer, because that's getting out there on a limb.
Right. But I could say that I've seen when she was in happier days, it was a little bit more, remiss, a little bit more remission. And when her abuse is more severe, then it came back more full force. I saw it, and having known her well over a decade,
Sure.
and now she's gone.
And happiness is an inside job, they say. We have to be happy from the inside.
Yes, but it's oriented towards others that truly makes you happy. When you give it away, you get to receive. That's kind of a fundamental rule for all
and having a reason
theologies.
why, like children or
Right.
something else
Sometimes
bigger
it's
than
just
ourselves.
being is enough of a reason why.
Being.
But even if you don't have children, to find a passion, if that means volunteering, that means giving of yourself in another way, because what I love about what you talk about in your book of finding that spirituality, that's another good outlet for that, or a way to manifest it. That's amazing that you
Which
talk
is
about
being-
this as a doctor.
Being a human being, being present, being just
Exactly right.
here
And that
in
leads
the
to the
present.
next chapter, which is self-talk.
Okay, so we're going to take another break, and
Yeah.
we're going to talk about self-talk right after this.
Are you disappointed by your tax returns? By maximizing your tax refund, you can look forward to less stress, more valuable life experiences, more stability. Kendall Ludden, tax preparer and refund strategist. He's here to help.
Welcome back to Beyond My Crisis. We're here with Dr. Ryan, and we're going to be talking about self-talk.
Right.
This is one of the major chapters in your book.
Yeah, it's worth my referring to it because there's so much there.
Self-talk is also referred to as the little voice, the inner voice.
No, not entirely the same.
Okay.
That's from an external source.
Okay.
I'm talking about what you say to yourself. Why me? That's one of the biggies,
Oh.
isn't it? Why me?
Right.
Do you find that to be negative?
Well, I find it to be interesting that the answer is why not you? It happens.
Right.
It happens. It was your turn. If they smoked, you tell them so. If they had other high-risk behaviors that we don't have the time to get into now, you tell them so.
There's high-risk behaviors that cause cancer?
Sure, eating high fructose corn syrup,
Sure, there are things, yes.
corn, glyphosates.
That causes cancer?
Well, doesn't help.
Self-talk that you can do well is laughter and beauty. Surround yourself with one and search for the other.
Laughter and beauty.
Right.
You mean
Baby
search
steps.
for laughter?
Yes. Surround yourself with laughter and search for the other. Beauty, search for beauty. Beauty's all around you. Baby steps. We all kind of know that from, who was it, Bill Murray in the movie with Richard Dreyfuss. Baby steps, got to take baby steps. I'll be okay as he carries his goldfish around in a bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Baby steps. Daily affirmations, that is what it sounds like, you know. Saying positive things doesn't make them positive, but it puts your mind in the right place to be receptive to more positive thinking.
And saying what we're grateful
Right.
for.
Toxic stress. Don't be around stuff that is clearly going to bum you out, and that includes people.
So
If
do you tell
somebody's
people
toxic,
to get rid of people in their lives?
I ask them, you know, or if I see it in the dynamic, you have to be very careful, you have to be very tactful, and you need to be very skilled. But
So
belongs in
narcissists,
here.
emotional vampires, and these
there's a
people
long
that
list, right?
have a long negative.
People who, but what do I say? Make it all about them. The patient is the one with the disease, not you. It's
Right.
about the patient. Living in the moment, that speaks for itself.
Of course.
Don't have a life that's in the rearview mirror. Honor your thoughts. Thoughts drive emotions. It's not the other way around. So
Emotions
honor.
don't drive thoughts. It's what
No.
we think will
Right.
manifest, kind of like
That's
the
right.
secret of sorts.
That's exactly right. Conspire against your emotions.
Wait, what does that mean?
It means your thoughts may or may not be well aligned, but your emotions run out of control because your thoughts aren't well aligned. So recognize the emotion that isn't right and conspire against it.
So let's using our logic
Right.
to recognize and be
Right.
mindful of a
Right.
negative emotion.
Right.
When the negative emotion is there,
Right.
just recognize and say, that's not who I want to
Conspire
be.
to defeat it. That's right. By thinking differently.
Yes.
It's cognitive behavioral therapy is what's known as.
CBT, or-
CBT.
right.
Right. Set goals. It doesn't matter. It may just be I'm going to roll to this side of the bed today.
Oh.
And maybe I'm going to go out and play a round of golf and anything in between. But set meaningful goals of realistic expectations because you feel great. You
It should
feel
be
just great.
Daily goals, right?
Right.
You're not-
And even if you have a disappointing event,
Right.
not to take that in so deeply.
You showed up. You showed
Yeah.
up and wore
Think
the
of the
uniform.
positive
You know,
things that
that's it.
Right.
Support groups, again, what you bring to the support group is greater than what you may take away initially in your mind, but in fact it's the opposite. If you bring yourself to the support group not thinking, what will I get out of it? And all the other people in the support group are also thinking that, bringing what they know, you now have everyone except you there giving you insights, and everyone there learning from yours. It's synergy. It's like a gestalt. And the last one is forgiveness, gratitude, and unconditional love. And they speak for themselves. There may be people you need to forgive. There may be people you need to show grace, unmerited mercy to them.
So
It doesn't mean to forget.
right.
No,
Well, I mean,
you can't. You can't forget.
I don't
But
know if this is
forgive.
what you mean, but when you say forgiveness, isn't it the forgiving others who have wronged you more healing to yourself that meant to forgive them is to help them?
That's a very
it
nice
helps
way
yourself.
of saying what I just talked about in support groups, yes. When you give it away, you end up with more. That's right.
What
That's very
about the
true.
unconditional love piece? How does that factor
Well,
in?
it sounds nice.
But what's the
Children
practicality
are
of it?
there is practicality to it. It's harder to do when we have so many years of history behind us. But you probably have memories, perhaps, of people, onesies or twosies, who really were skilled at it. You see it among parents and their children. You often see that.
Unconditional love, yeah. Even if a child is doing something wrong,
Right.
the parent has love for them, whether it's corrective behavior or just acceptance.
I think that even if you don't know anyone who has cancer or you don't have this situation in your life, and hopefully you never will, but I think everyone should read it because you, as I've read the book, you have so many pieces of wisdom, so many nuggets of wisdom that everybody can use it in everyday life. And I don't mean to sound trite
live their
about
life
it,
happily,
but
yeah.
I really think that that's something that everyone should be reading. Your book is literally something I think everyone should read on how to have
Thank
a better,
you.
more fulfilling life.
One of the reasons why I did that is because we have all now access to the internet. The internet has the National Cancer Institute website that tells you all about every kind of cancer that you'd want to know, written for laymen. It has all of the protocols that it knows of that are open throughout the world, not just this country. But also on the internet is I'm Joe's Kickapoo Joy Juice, you know? Take me and I'll set you free. And so on and so forth. Anecdotes.
So we need to use the internet to
Intelligently.
elevate our happiness, our joy,
Right.
our wonder.
And have the doctor help guide you. Now, if they say there's nothing on there but garbage, that's not true. There's a lot of PubMed, Medline, MedQuest. There's a lot of good stuff on there, and the NCI does a lot of great teaching, as does the National Institutes of Health. But you want to bring that information to your physician,
Right.
and so you can work together, synergy, as a team.
But what's really nice is that you actually have a website that is exactly the name of your book to
Right.
provide as a free resource.
Right.
In addition to getting the book. You definitely should get the book too. I think it's an immense source of knowledge. Like I said, even if you don't have cancer in your life, and hopefully you won't, but regardless if you do or don't have it, we're so lucky that you're very, very intelligent and great
Brilliant,
personality
really,
to
really brilliant.
have brought through a lot of
You've been talking to
expertise.
my mom then.
Yeah. But thank you for all
I
the
can't
efforts, the
believe-
40 years of effort that
Yeah.
you've taken your wisdom of your life to create a book that people can now use.
So what's
The best of the best of what you've done.
And say it just once, because I love this URL. What's the URL?
www, with no spaces, when tumor is the rumor and cancer is the answer.com.
Yeah.
When tumor is the rumor and cancer is the answer.com.
And despite it being .com, all proceeds go to the American Cancer Society. I get nothing out of
That
it.
is immensely generous.
But what do
of
you get out of it?
That I completed a ministry that I was destined to have.
Yeah.
That I
That's
wrote the
amazing.
book that my wife said I was always writing in my life. That I lived up to what it was that I was supposed to do. That maybe I calmed a beating heart out of control.
Yeah.
Maybe I did that.
So you're contributing to the human race.
And
That's
this
the
is your
point.
legacy. That is
Well,
the point. But you've
yeah.
also helped thousands of people. I mean, probably tens of thousands of already, having both been a doctor and thank you very much again for your service in the military. But that's a lot to remember. If you choose to step up and lead, you will have an immense ripple effect, just as you have led by example. And I don't want to sound, expected what I'm saying, but it's really true.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much
And
for what
this
you've done and
is
your contributions.
Very, very appreciated. And thank you very much for watching. And this is how you get beyond your crisis.